All right, thank you. I call this hearing of the Archaeological Review Committee of October 7th, 2021 to order. May we have a roll call vote, please? Roll call, please.
Member Wands.
Excused.
Chair Eck.
Present.
Member Zen.
Here.
Member Ivy.
Here.
And Member Pierce. Member Pierce.
Present.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Okay.
The first item on the agenda is approval of said agenda. Is there anything to add to this?
None from staff.
All right. Members?
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't have, I do think, oh yeah, it does. It has the approval of minutes. Never mind.
I would just like to clarify that item, approval of minutes. There are none in the packet, therefore that item is moot. Am I correct?
We got them online, Chair.
Like earlier today, right? Well, I thought
About an hour or two ago.
There
yeah.
are no minutes in the packet, and therefore I think this item is moot. We can speak about the minutes at great length later under administrative matters and communications if necessary, but not having materials in front of me, I really can't recommend we consider anything.
Yeah, agreed, Mr. Chair.
I move for approval of the agenda with the elimination approval of minutes.
I second that.
And seconded, roll call vote, please.
Member Zen.
Yes.
Member Ivy.
Yes.
Member Pierce.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to item D, matters from the floor. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak from the floor? Please raise your digital hand or otherwise make known your intent.
Chair, I see no hands.
All right, thank you. First item we can actually consider then is old business. Case number 2021-4112, Michael O'Connell, archaeologist with Paleo West, requests to be listed on the City of Santa Fe list of approved archaeologists and historians for the River and Trails and Suburban Archaeological Review Districts. We have materials in the packet. Thank you for that. Looks like the memo comes from Nicole. Is there anything to change on that memo?
None from staff.
Thank you. Is Mr. O'Connell in attendance?
I'm going to allow to talk and ask to unmute. Please be sworn in.
Yes, I am here.
Welcome, Michael. You'll need to be sworn in, so I'll turn you over to Ms. Kinney.
Okay, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Michael O'Connell. I live at 11708 Clifford Avenue Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Michael. Please fill us in on the changes that have been made and what we need to.
I can't hear anything, Mr. Chair.
We are having audio difficulties.
From me?
I think he can't hear me or anyone.
That's correct.
Did you manage to change something, Dale?
I've got you now.
All right, sorry about that. We don't know what happened on this end.
Sorry.
So Michael, please fill us in on anything we need to know regards your reapplication.
This is essentially, I sent an update of the chart of experience as we had discussed at the previous meeting, that I had supervisory experience that was outside of New Mexico that was not listed on that previous chart of experience. I've gone ahead and updated the chart of experience to add those days, including both supervisory and non-supervisory roles.
All right. If that is all, we'll move to committee members. Member Ivy,
I have no questions.
thank you. Member Zinn,
Zen appears to have disappeared.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry,
it's just off camera.
I was.
So Dale, do you have any observations or questions?
Well, I usually leave these matters of professional standing to the rest of the committee who actually are archaeologists. But I noticed that within Santa Fe, we've got, I think, 5 total days within Santa Fe. And we requesting for rivers and trails and suburban. So I would leave it up to the rest of the committee to make that decision.
All right, thank you. Member Pierce,
Yeah, I guess I have one question. We have a couple of writing samples here for Mr. O'Connell, one being a master's thesis and the other a chapter from a report which he co-authored. I'm curious if the applicant has any reports that he has solely authored, meaning from beginning to end.
Thank you.
We discussed this last time, I believe. Chair Eck brought it up, but there were a few negative NIAFs that I had, was the sole author for. I know this wasn't included in part of the packet, but there were a couple sole NIAFs and actually a sole NIAF that I worked on just last week that is not included in that as well. But other than that, there are very limited sole authorship reports.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a little concerning, but, well, to be frank, the risk here is with Paleo West, right? If you author a report for this committee and we kick it back because we don't think it's up to snuff, it's Paleo West and by extension their client that suffers. It's really no skin off our nose. So otherwise, I think the level of experience is in line with other people that we have permitted for the rivers and trails and suburban. Certainly nowhere close to the historic downtown, but I guess I have no objections other than that one caveat that the lack of author reports is a little troubling, but you know, that's always the case until you get that first one. So no further comments. Thank you.
thank you, Derek. I agree. It's always the case until we get the first one. And I too have to say I have no objection, but I do want to make it clear that when you do submit something to the city on behalf of Paleo West with your name on it, it's going to be scrutinized by city staff and by this group, and depending on circumstance, also by Historic Preservation Division. So it may not be as simple and straightforward as one might hope. Just to be forewarned.
Understood.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up on that quickly.
Yes.
I'd like to recommend to the applicant that when that first report does head our way, the cultural history is very important. Don't give us the generalized history of the Upper Rio Grande. Make sure that it is site specific to the neighborhood that your project is in. That's a common mistake by a lot of first or early authors, and it's not going to fly. So make sure that your research is tailored to the project that you're working on, not just a general recounting of the northern half of New Mexico.
Understood.
Thank you, Derek. And that prompts me to say, in addition, that there's a requirement in the city of Santa Fe for some research into the history of ownership of the property. That is especially the case in the downtown, but it is always helpful everywhere in the city, and it establishes some general thresholds upon which to perhaps relate observed historic archaeological phenomena in your project area. So again, I guess just encourage you to check all sources that are relevant to the area in question and proceed accordingly. So with that all said, if no one has anything else to offer, we could craft a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that in case 4112, that we approve the applicant for listing on the City of Santa Fe list of approved archaeologists and historians for the suburban and river and trails districts.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll for a vote.
Member Zen,
Yes.
Member Ivy,
Yes,
Member Pierce.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And congratulations, Michael. And we look forward to seeing something from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. On to new business. Case number 2021-4288. Ron Winters, agent for Trey Jordan, requests approval for archaeological survey and testing report for 0.164 acre lot at 213 Delgado Street in the Downtown Archaeological Review District. We have staff report. Thank you, Carly. Anything to add to that?
No, sir.
All right. At this point, we turn to the applicant. Power him to speak. And upon arrival, I'll have to be sworn in by Ms. Kenny.
Should be unmuted.
Mr. Winters, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Ron Winters, 109 Calle Paula, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87505.
Thank you. You may proceed.
So on this one, as you know, I did the adjacent lot. I found a few more artifacts, but very late, like in the one test unit, the 7 green glass artifacts were all from a single 7-Up bottle. So there was, there were occasionally a true historic artifact, but a lot of this stuff was very, very late. What is the term? Recent historic, I guess. And I didn't go that deep. To qualify that, the artifacts were found in the first few centimeters. I stopped at 26, 28, I believe, because I hit that cobble lens that you see in the profiles, and you can actually see in the trench photos, the trench photos and the test unit photos. And that's it.
All right. Committee members, Members in?
No real comments. Ron, did you find any, you didn't find any evidence on historic, the background of any structure there? King's map, nothing?
I didn't find anything, and I didn't find any evidence, subsurface either.
Yeah, well, these are historically were lots that went north to south, and I guess they end up, Delgado divided them up this way. But I'm just surprised there was, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Member Ivy?
I have no questions.
All right. Member Pierce?
Yeah, Ron, I was about to jump all over you for not going deep enough in your test units, but then just now you explained why. It would have been good if that explanation had been in the report.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have gone through the trouble of highlighting all of those things.
Right.
Yeah, because it wasn't clear in the report itself that, you stopped essentially because you had to. You couldn't get any farther with the cobbles in the way.
Right.
That would be
Okay.
would have been a good thing to know in print. But otherwise, I have no comments.
All right. I was standing right next to Derek when he was thinking about the cobbles. And the only other thing I would say is that the history of the parcel that is normally a part of these reports appears to not be mentioned in terms of chain of ownership, how this thing came to be the little thing it is, alluding to Member Zinn's observation that the previous lot layouts were oriented completely differently. Is there a reason why we don't have historic treatment of assessors records?
That's a good question, David, and a valid one. I absolutely do not know how that got left out. Normally, that's a part of the report. I'd be happy to add that history in an addendum.
This item will move to ARMS through the trickling process of city submittal, but it's perfectly valid for you to rewrite the thing and provide a whole and entire version without addendum
Okay.
for filing. And in fact, if you had such a thing, you could get that to ARMS and uploaded even before the city moves in the way it does. And the rest of the world would know what you did here and what you saw. And
Okay.
that would be good.
Okay.
So I'm thinking I would have no need to see that before it was submitted. So I'm not implying that we need to prolong or postpone or whatever the term is this case. If committee members are moved to make a motion, consider it.
Mr. Chair, the addition of the parcel history, is that something maybe we could accept subject to staff approval?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
great. If everybody else is happy with that, we could fold that into a motion.
That's what I was thinking. So let me find my
Go for it, Derek.
cover space sheet again. Mr. Chair, I move in case.
We're doing.
Losing my mind here. Oh, here we go. 4288. Survey of 2013 Delgado Street. That we approve the project subject to Mr. Winter submitting a revised report with the parcel history included to be verified by HPD staff.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Member Zen,
Yes.
Member Ivy,
Yes.
Member Pierce.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion carries. Moving on to case number 2021-4290. Ron Winters, agent for Otero Partners LLC, requests approval of an archaeological testing and survey report for a 1.19 acre development project at 220 Otero Street in the historic downtown Archaeological Review District. We have the staff report. Thank you for that, Carly. Anything to add?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Winters, you're still under oath, so hold forth as you feel the need.
A couple things. First, as you know, I normally would include a detailed analysis of both Pueblo pottery or sherds, ceramics, and faunal analysis. I said in the report that those will have to follow. Unfortunately, the woman I use, who you all know, Gwyneth Duncan, her father passed away, and she was gone for a few weeks, and so didn't get to analyze the faunal analysis. I use her because she's very good. And her reporting and analysis is also top notch. And I will include also the few sherds that were found in that addendum, whatever you want to call it. But Gwyneth is back, and she said she would get on that for me. So I will have that to you shortly. The other thing is, there was one artifact that I didn't illustrate that I probably should have because of its potential importance to historic figure here in Santa Fe. And I want to show you, I mentioned it in the test unit, but can you see this object?
Nope.
We're currently not seeing any image from your.
You got no video going, Ron.
How do I do that? Where I have audio.
Depends on what you're working on.
Yeah, and there's no place on my, I've got a mute button, I've got a raise hand and a leave. That's the extent of my.
In your you have an iPad, or what are you working on?
Yes.
Should be just touch the very top of the screen. Should give you ability to start and stop video. In the black spot above all our pictures.
Yeah.
Nope.
It just says Ron Winters is talking. Normally it will come up.
Well, you need to buy the new version. Anyway,
Well,
I think I know what you're trying to show, Ron. You can describe it.
Okay, I'll describe.
Uh-oh.
Now you're
You have me.
You're back. You're back.
Okay. Now, do you have video? Oh,
Yes.
Yay!
there I am. Okay, so as I was saying, this object that came out of one of the test units might be important to a figure here in Santa Fe. This object is a yo-yo that may well be attributed to one famous architect here in Santa Fe, Dale Zinn, who used to apparently cut through this yard on his way downtown, maybe ditching school. I don't know what he was doing, but anyway, I probably should have illustrated and given the backstory, but I thought I'd embarrass him publicly instead.
No, absolutely not. It's impossible to do, Ron.
I would offer from a long distance observation of artifact characteristics that it seems to not match the time frame of Member Zinn's ill-spent youth.
Misfit youth? No,
Depends on if it's a Duncan made one or something like that. I don't know.
there's no identification. So it was just a theory, actually.
Just a theory.
Yeah.
Well, to expand on that, Mr. Chair and the rest of the committee, I used to walk down on the north side of this lot, and then I actually delivered newspapers to a lot of the engineers inside of McKee. But they wouldn't let us walk on the lawn, so we tiptoed down that little brick wall till we got to the sidewalk, and then that was on my way, not to misfit youth, but to go to school every day and to come back.
So you say, okay,
So I said,
okay,
Carlos Gilbert and Harvey Junior High School. I want you to know.
okay.
But that was where I saw that artifact, and I called Ron and I said, I think it's mine. I think that yo-yo is mine. But then I was really disappointed that you didn't have any huge background of the history of yo-yos. So I just looked it up, and there's yo-yos go back to 1000 BC, and including in Greece at 500 BC, where they have plates and jars with young men with yo-yos. And the word and the name yo-yo comes from a Filipino guy who in 1920s was playing with his version of a yo-yo, and Mr. Duncan from Wisconsin apparently saw him, and in Filipino, not Philip, is it Thai? What's the
Tagalog.
Yeah, Tagalog is the word yo-yo means coming back, and so that's where that name comes from. And Duncan bought it and marketed it that way.
Well, I'm sure I would have included that had I considered it historic, but
I think it's over 50 years old, Ron, but 75 is the archaeological one. So yes, I think Chairman Eck is
certainly we are,
correct.
but I don't know that the yo-yo is. But
Okay, we'll leave it all at that.
okay, I didn't make this up, David.
Oh,
I was,
that's reassuring, Ron.
I was just noticing the material that it seems to be made out of.
Yes.
That's plastic. It's plastic.
All right. Where do we stand? I've completely lost the thread.
I'm sorry. We just hijacked the meeting, sir.
Well, we didn't get to me yet, and I do have one question for Ron.
Yes.
All right. Never mind.
So the HCPI form that you provided, that is not one you did. It's something John Murphy did a few years ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating to me that in 2017, he still wasn't getting an HCPI number. But
I meant to tell you that, Derek. It was confounding, I mean, yeah.
So that's something we'll clearly have to fix at this end. But I did notice that on the registration tab of the NIAF form, when you logged it into NIMCRIS, the project, you put 2 resources. You actually only recorded 1.
Okay.
So it's a little confusing. I would probably change that so that we're not endlessly looking for that other resource that there's no mention of, because you didn't link the HCPI, because you didn't visit the HCPI. Counting it confuses the issue. I would change that to 1 resource.
Okay.
Visit in our sense means that you actually recorded it in some way, even if if all you did was submit a 1-page thing that says nothing changed, that's still a visit, but just walking around the building is not.
Oh, okay.
Or providing a courtesy copy.
And so, Derek, does John is the one that has to apply for the HICPI number, correct?
That's what he should have done in 2017, yes.
Okay.
So we'll have to fix it for him, figure out what project that was and register it to that project.
Okay. Got it.
But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, change the number of resources so that we're not
absolutely
looking for that second one.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
And first thing I have to say is same thing I said on the last one. There's no discussion of parcel.
I think there is a little bit.
if there is, it's not in the paper copy, and I am separated from the digital copy. While Member Pierce is searching for that, I'll move on to speak to the previous structures that were on the property, which is why I was concerned about the history of ownership. There's supposed to have been an estate, which implies biggish buildings, including a swimming pool. Be really nice to know where those used to be and how that relates to where your test trenches and test units went in, and how that might relate to the near ubiquitous deposit of artifacts that you report. It could be an artifact of demolition. It could be an artifact of the trash disposal behavior, although again, estate would imply somebody doing something other than pitching it in the backyard. So I'm kind of wondering where all this stuff came from. Did you consult historic maps?
I did, and I got from the client about a supposed estate. I didn't find any evidence in terms of, I mean, the artifacts that I found throughout the site were smeared. It was fill. There was no foundation. Part of the problem with this project was where you could even dig. I mean, the whole thing is paved, landscaped, built upon. The quote swimming pool or supposed swimming pool, there was no evidence. It was supposedly where I put, let's see, trench number 5, diagonal trench, and it was fill. I mean, there were a few artifacts, but there was no evidence of, it covered that area from side to side. You know, from the edge where it drops off to the steps there that lead up to the building. So even, you know, in the very long trenches that I did, no evidence of foundation of a structure. The only thing I can summarize is that if there was, and that it was where the building is currently. And that's why there's no evidence of it in the areas that I tested. The front parking lot, as you know, I put the test units to the east because the front parking lot is currently being used. There's businesses operating out of there, and they asked me not to dig up the parking lot that's actively being used. The one where I did put the long trenches is not currently being used.
It looks to me from the plan, the plat, showing the plan of development, that they're probably not going to tear out that east parking lot. It looks like they're going to just continue to use it as a parking lot.
Right. Hence them not wanting me to dig it up.
But the original address of this was Otero, is that right, Ron?
The original address?
Right. As I read through your stuff, it seems like it had an Otero address, and then when they got done, they switched it to, or is it the other way around? It was at a Washington Avenue address. Was it the change in address?
Yes, yeah, it's an Otero address now, but it wasn't originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that tells me it might have been lower on the lot, whatever this so-called estate was. But I'm curious about that too, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
Member Pierce, I thought I detected you on a search for something that
Yeah, you had asked about the parcel history, and you're correct, there is no parcel history in the document. I was confusing it with sort of the personal history he presented on Mr. McKee.
Correct.
right. For what it's worth, I looked at the Sanborn fire insurance maps, and this area is a convenient void. When coverage of those maps reaches out to include this area, there is nothing illustrated. You can see the property lines pretty much. So you know you're looking at the same place, and there is never anything drawn on this property. So in 1938, there was nothing there. In 1945, when the maps were revised, there was nothing there. And in 1948, when people made hand notation alterations to these maps, there was nothing there. So an estate was born post 1948 and disappeared in 1950. Something here doesn't add up. So I'm really, really curious about the property ownership records.
Okay.
And curious enough that I think I'd like to see the results of analysis. Whether the committee believes that they need to see that as a matter of official business, or whether there's some other means of conveying that information, I'll leave up to the members. But I, for one, think it ought to be in here.
David, here's a possibility, because I am going to do an addendum for the final analysis in the few sherds that I wasn't able to do for the report. How about including that in an addendum with, whatever I can find out about this parcel history?
And bring that to the committee?
Yeah.
Sounds workable to me. We have 4 members present. We'll see what.
Maybe a conditional approval with the condition that this faunal pottery or sherd and whatever I can find out about parcel history is all included.
Mr. Chair, I really feel like that's interesting information that will come. I think conditional approval is probably appropriate. Clearly, the site has been fully developed, and its history now has much to do with McKee and Los Alamos and et cetera, et cetera. And that is a contributing building. Each board has given it a contributing status. So I think the site development from 1950 forward really is the interesting part of this site now. I don't think that's going to change much the archaeological history of this, but it certainly would be nice to know more about that one particular fact. I don't think it's going to change our decision.
So maybe just informational submittal for the committee.
The reason I'm interested in parcel history is to try to put this archaeological site that we have been presented with in a context. As of right now, I have no history. I have a listed structure, and sandwiched in between some undefined point in prehistory and the construction of this building something else happened, and that is the context in which this archaeological site needs to be placed. In a sense, the contributing structure is after the fact and is not 100% relevant to the discussion of the archaeological site. I know it's there and it's cool and all that, and yes, it's important, but what we've been presented with is an archaeological site that has no home, and that's what I'm in search of.
David, one thing I would say is, are you familiar with the property? Because there's a 6-foot drop from the south side of the property down to, Marcy. And on the west, that's on the south side. On the west, it's about the same down to the parking lot of Santa Cafe and those buildings there. It's been dramatically altered in terms of cut and fill. In none of the excavation that I did I find any features, any artifacts that I felt were in their original context. The soil to me appeared to be fill. The stuff that had been moved, the artifacts moved around because of, the cut and fill that occurred in the landscaping of this property.
Yes.
Ron,
And that's exactly the point. We don't
Yeah.
know where the stuff came from.
Right. Yes, Derek.
yeah, if I might ask, do you have a sense of your client's timeline here? I mean, this is not a utility trench, it's the construction of a hotel, a fairly
Right.
long project. So what I'm getting at is, if we were to postpone until the next meeting, are we placing any hardship on your client? I mean, are they really realistically going to break ground in the next 30 days?
Well, I think they would say yes, and I would probably say yes, because they pushed me to get this, completed and get it to you guys.
So they
Yeah.
came to you with some urgency then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
So this archaeological site, as defined, is a layer of artifact-laden fill. It does not appear to have a ton of ash, charcoal, and other organic stuff. It seems to be objet and dirt. And where it came from, if indeed this was built up as is implied, would be interesting.
Mhm.
The stratigraphy of your trenches, does any of that support the building up of this property?
Well, I think a great deal of soil was either brought in or was redistributed, because just given the topography in and around it, and the lack of what appeared to me as original or intact stratigraphy. Yeah.
The building was terraced from Washington Avenue up to Otero. I mean, I think there was a slope there with, as Chairman Eck is saying, there was a building on there somewhere, and they went in there and terraced it and built a platform for a new building and a parking lot.
Right.
The mystery there, and I guess this is the point of Chairman Eck, is that parking lot. If we clear this entire site, then that parking lot is free to be disturbed, and maybe yet for the grace of God goes all the really great stuff in this whole site. So it probably would be good to know if the structure was up there on Otero or down on Washington Avenue or in the middle. I think John Murphy should be able to pull that stuff out in some magic hat.
Well, he may very well have it in his notes. It's just not
Exactly.
reflected in his HCPI form.
Right.
But the reason behind all this is we have an archaeological site in an undefined stratigraphic context of unknown origin. And it's been recommended as having the potential to return important information. If we don't have the context, I'm not sure how we can say it has that potential or doesn't have that potential. We don't know enough. And thinking about fill, and I think I remembered a mention of 6 feet of elevation difference.
Mhm.
The trench depths are not sufficient to have penetrated below hypothetical fill that has been added to parts of this project area, if indeed that is what happened. So we would be in a position of not knowing what the undisturbed original surface and local fill looks like, because once you've got superposition of added material, we have to investigate further to get the answer.
Well, the question is, during this terracing, was it, what was cut and what was fill? I mean, and what was slope? I mean, you could go down. Well, I mean, you couldn't without stepping or shoring, you couldn't go down deep enough to get to below present ground surface without going quite deep, I wouldn't imagine. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know, there wasn't any good indication to tell me, what the original ground surface looked like.
I also
Or
might
where it was.
point out that the parking lot on the south side of this building, part of it, not the whole lot, was over excavated quite a bit. And as you pointed out, where the bank parking lot, it was also over excavated quite a bit. So, this may be the only isolated bit of terracing, but you get an idea of, I don't know if any archaeological was done on those other 2 sites, I doubt it, but I think basically you would have done a balanced cut and fill, so you didn't have to haul away a bunch of dirt. So I don't know what I'm really saying here is that I think you could go 8 to 10 feet and still not hit in certain areas, what you
My point, yeah.
might be interested in.
Yep. And it is the case that none of this could be cut and fill. It could literally all be fill.
True.
And God knows where the artifacts came from under that scenario. So I think key to understanding this is knowing where the bottom is.
Drill, baby.
So this is not my committee and it's not my purview to dictate anything, but I'll just say what I think I would do if I were a city archaeologist. That implies a lot of things that we don't have. Apologies to Carly. I would go out there with a backhoe tomorrow and I would punch a hole about 10 feet deep. I wouldn't get in it, so I don't have to worry about stepping it, but I would do it so I could see what the heck is going on down there. And then build the argument forward. If we can establish sterile and establish stratigraphy that shows its pre-development condition, we might be able to speak to how much fill was added.
Mr. Chair, I've got a note from John Murphy, says he's got a picture. I think basically I would make a motion to approve case, where was case number 4290 with the addition of additional information on the tract, the ownership, and any structures to be submitted and reviewed by staff, along with the suggested other materials on pottery and fauna that Ron has already mentioned needs to be submitted.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote time.
Member Zen,
Yes.
Member Ivy,
yes.
Member Pierce,
Yes.
motion carries.
Motion carries.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
so now that it's moved and seconded and carried, what do you think of that idea?
Oh, what Dale suggested?
No,
What
But,
David suggested, that makes me nervous because going 10 feet deep and not going in the trench, how are you going to see the stratigraphy? You can't. I mean, my inclination would be to go in the trench.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
is-
another alternative that we didn't discuss, and that's monitoring during construction.
yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think you're going to find it. I think step one, you need to get as much information from any resources, including John Murphy, because I think Chairman Eck was correct. I think he's got stuff in his notes. He is just said it's pictures on another laptop, so he's going to send that, but I'll have it sent on to you. But I'm not sure he should be your sole source. I'm curious about that parking lot up above. I really think everything else has been disturbed pretty well going down. And as Member Pierce has said, I think monitoring during construction might be a really good idea. On this side, I think this is a very good plan that's been proposed. I think it does the best to preserve the facades of that building that are important, that represent Kruger's design thinking. And I think that should be monitored as well. But I think you just need to gather as much information on that building as possible.
I don't have any objection to monitoring. I do it all the time, even when it's not required. I mean, I visit my sites during construction, to see, what's going on. And, if, I'll do, a cursory, survey to see if anything's turned up that I didn't see. But I can certainly, I can let my client know that that's a suggestion by the ERC, and happily.
Would it strengthen your case if we revisit my motion and make it a requirement to monitor?
Sure. No,
So
absolutely.
moved. So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that, provided we're allowed to do.
In order.
Yes, and not violating rules of order here. I'll second it.
We've got an attorney here.
Is there a need to have further discussion? Because I was going to ask a question that may be germane to the whole this we have a site that has been recommended as significant, but then recommended that it not be further investigated or protected. So the motion as stands approves this report that says two things. I think we need clarity. Is it significant or not? Does it need protection and further investigation or not? Fold that in, and then I think we could think about the monitoring requirement. Because if it's not significant, do not require monitoring.
Now, the word significant to me, Mr. Chairman, you'd have to define that because it's a contributing building. It may be a contributing archaeological site.
The building, for the purposes of this committee, must be irrelevant. It's the archaeological site that we're dealing with, the subject of Ron's report. That is what we have to consider. The building comes later and is there, and yes, I'm concerned about it and I enjoy it, I like it, and I want to protect it, but it's not relevant to the discussion of the site. The site is relevant to the discussion of what is required going forward. Normally, we do not require anything of applicants if sites are determined not significant under the city's ordinance. We haven't done that. We've accepted a report that says both things. We need to have that resolved before we start adding requirements to our applicants.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that puts us in a catch-22 because in my opinion, we don't know if the site is significant. Based simply upon Mr. Winter's finding of, a few centimeters of mixed fill, it would not be. But we have this big unknown of, potentially other structures present that are not accounted for either in the survey or in his historical research. So I would say the significance is still undetermined.
All right.
Is that, Pierce, is that archaeological significance that you're talking about as opposed to the structural?
Yeah,
Okay.
Regardless of the structure.
Just making sure.
Right. The archaeological site itself, the artifacts and the limited stratigraphy we've seen would not get us to significance. But we have this wild card out there that there may be other buildings unaccounted for. That's why it is, and in my opinion, still undetermined.
But it could very well be under the existing building. I mean, so you'd never find it. I mean, I was pretty close, in the test unit and in a couple of the trenches to the footprint of the existing building and found no evidence.
Anything to make it more difficult.
The point I was leading up to is that I've always been told when eligibility or significance is unknown, you treat it as if it is significant until proof otherwise.
That's all.
Hence the monitor. But I appreciate the chair's point. We really don't know what we're approving at this point.
Don't think the city's ordinance has the concept of eligibility written into it. It's significant or not.
Right.
I'm the new assistant city attorney that's been assigned to monitor archaeological review committee meetings. And I'm sorry I haven't met everybody. I have met Mr. Zinn, and because I was out there at the De La Cruz house a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, I work with Carly and Julie on a regular basis. It was this in the packet. I got 2 packets for today's meeting. And I don't recall there was any question about either the ability to trench on this site or any finding that would, compel a conclusion that these were culturally significant. Is this another site that I didn't get a packet for?
220 Otero, Mr. City Attorney.
Oh, okay. See, I thought that, you know, at least from having read that report, that I didn't see anything in there that would indicate this was culturally significant. I remember glass fragments and bones from fauna. Can you tell me what is it that prompted the discussion about this being culturally significant?
Primarily, the recommendation of the archaeologist representing the applicant, who says in the report that the site is significant for its potential to provide information regarding the history of Santa Fe.
From an go ahead. From an archaeological perspective,
Yeah,
or was there confusion as to whether or not that building was? Because I heard kind of a discussion about whether or not the building was contributing or non-contributing.
No.
may I hold forth here? I will be the chair, and I have no gavel, but I've got a baseball and a bat. So I'll click the two together if I have to.
Okay.
From an archaeological perspective, under the city's ordinance, the building is irrelevant. Think of it as a vacant lot. There's nothing there.
Okay.
About to build something. We found some material in a context that the archaeologist representing the applicant has documented and has said is significant. That is the basic question that this committee is charged with asking and answering. Is this thing recommended as significant, actually significant under the city's ordinance? In fact, a tight reading of our whole archaeological ordinance, that's the only thing this committee is empowered to do, period. And I'm of the opinion, as you heard earlier, that we don't know enough to say. We have crafted a motion that accepted the report. And with that motion, one interpretation is that monitoring would be a logical next step to provide some insurance against currently unexpected aspects of this site that could be discovered during construction. The other interpretation is that we've made a motion and approved it that says the site's not significant. And then under that scenario, monitoring is madness, because that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be making a clear decision based on clear evidence.
I think, David, that in the site form that I said that the site was not eligible. I didn't feel it was, when in my closing statement, I did say that, you know, the lot can contribute to the information on the prehistory of, or the history of Santa Fe, but I was more focusing on the building and not the site.
But the building is not your purview. It is not your expertise, and it is not your charge.
Right.
You're supposed to speak to the archaeology.
But if I say that there's nothing you can learn from this in my closing statement, does that that doesn't apply to the building?
No,
that's
has
on the
nothing to
property?
do with the building.
Okay.
The building doesn't exist for all practical purposes.
Okay.
From
Well,
what
I didn't feel that the site was significant and or eligible for National Register status. And I say
So,
that.
is your statement in the report as to the significance of the archaeological site an error that should be corrected? Because
Yes.
you were conflating the building with site.
Yes. Yes.
Great. That gives us a path forward. Someone want to make a motion based on that?
This is a question for the chair and then maybe the attorney as well. Does the previous motion need to be rescinded?
Yes.
See, I think that's something that the members have to decide. Do you want me to look in Robert's rules to see what kind of vote that requires? Or?
No, I think the cleanest thing, Mr. Chair, is for me to move to rescind my previous motion and then have one crafted that is more suitable for everyone in attendance here.
I'm happy with that. If the attorneys are happy with that,
If there's no objection, then the attorneys are happy.
I move to rescind my motion to approve on case 4290 and open up the floor for a new motion as members see fit.
there's a
I
motion
second.
and second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Sen,
Aye.
Member Ivy,
Aye.
and Member Pierce.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We are now open for any further discussion as needed and an attempt to craft another motion in the light of new information.
So, Mr. Chair, everything here hinges upon whether we agree that this archaeological site is significant or not, or we just don't know. What would it take to get to the point where we do know?
I've already stated my opinion, but I'm happy to hear others.
Well, certainly the archival research, the parcel history would help. Would that in itself be sufficient?
But you said the building doesn't matter.
No, but the parcel history may, because there may have been other buildings there before the current building. That's what is throwing a monkey wrench in this whole question.
Also, the standing building matters in the sense that it's covering a significant section of the site, or potentially a really significant section.
And it prevents investigation of that subset of the property, but the rest of it is theoretically in play, with the possible exception of the parking lot. If somebody can guarantee me they're going to keep the parking lot in perpetuity. Because we're clearing the whole property, not just where the trenches have been dug.
That's correct.
And for the attorneys in the crowd, that's a significant difference between how the state and the federal government does archaeological clearance. They clear projects, not property. In the simplest translation, you want to build X, it's okay or not. You want to build Y, that's a different question for a different time in a different place. In the city, somebody wants to do something, we clear a piece of property and it's cleared in perpetuity. No more archaeology necessary. The only thing that will rise to the level of requiring further attention is an unanticipated discovery, primarily of human remains.
Yeah, see, Ron, it could be worse.
When they start building, it will be worse maybe. Derek, would you like to form a motion?
I don't think so. I still don't know what that motion would be.
Come on, Dale, stop now.
Well, I think I'm going to move to push this to our next meeting and give you and Mr. Murphy and others that may have more information a chance to fill out our informational vacuum and resubmit with the additional information that you gain plus your other analysis. It may cause a small delay, but I think that it's important that we know. I'm curious about the fact that Mr. Chairman Eck had a quick look at the Sanborns and doesn't show anything, because there's a clear photograph that I just sent to Ron and to Carly that has 1952, the crane sitting on there demolishing, and the address of the estate was actually Washington Avenue. And the swimming pool was in back of Washington Avenue. So my guess is the swimming pool is pretty much where that building is. And the building was down on the Washington Avenue side. So we may be shooting in the dark, but at least I think we got, and I'm sure there was something up on Otero as well. So I think we just need to find that out.
Right. There are buildings along Otero and buildings along Washington on all the Sanborn maps, and what they are and what they turned into is undefined on that source of information in most cases. You can sometimes string it together if you get into the minute.
Well, what's interesting about this was the estate of Levi Hughes, and the $150,000 or $160,000 paid for it was a significant number in terms of a real estate purchase back in the 1950s. So it's probably a big thing. So there ought to be more than one picture of a crane knocking it down. I don't know. So that's my motion, and I don't know if we took a vote or not, did we?
No, you made a motion to postpone till the next scheduled meeting.
Right.
And
May I
we
ask a,
heard a second. Carly?
may I ask a clarifying question for the motion?
Sure.
You motioned to postpone, and is there a requirement added? Can you restate that requirement if so?
Well, first of all, it'd be postponed to date certain, which would be the next meeting. And the requirement is to add to the information on the original site development as much as possible, and to submit his analysis of the flora and fauna and artifacts. I don't know what else was missing as far as the other report. Ron, what was that?
It was the shared analysis and the funnel analysis, and then the parcel history. There's the three.
Okay,
things.
parcel history, funnel analysis, artifact history and analysis, and I think that covers it.
I'll
It's
second
muddy,
that
but
motion.
you can clean it up.
Clear enough, Carly?
Say that again?
Is that clear enough?
That's clear enough. Thank you.
And did I hear Member Pierce chime in?
I did second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Zen,
Yes.
Member Ivy,
Yes,
Member Pierce,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Ron. We hope to see you with augmented documentation next month
I'll be there. Here.
You're there.
somewhere in virtual reality or else.
We're still doing this next month too, correct?
Yes, I
Okay.
think so.
Correct.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
bye, Ron.
So. Administrative matters and communications. City staff, what do we have?
I have minutes. So we have several packets of minutes, months of minutes that we have sent, that I've sent out. And there will be some more. They will be on the agenda for the next meeting. The other item I have is Melissa Byers will be our steno for the coming months. So we have a stenographer back. And then introductions, we have Frank, our attorney, that's assigned to HPD that you just met. And then we also have our planner, Amanda Romero Avila, and she is taking notes for us today. I think she's got her camera may not be working today, but say hello, Amanda.
She's sitting in the dark.
Yeah, as are we all.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda's partially in permits right now, so she is supporting us as much as she can at this time.
See all those drawings behind her? She has to
Yes.
work all of those.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Plan room.
She has more paper than I do, and that's saying something.
Yeah, you sure started with a good one here, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, and one other item, Nicole is supporting the division through the end of the year, but she is off and until Tuesday.
Okay.
May I speak, Mr. Chairman, about the minutes that are forthcoming and that have come? Is in every case, Carly, they have used the word, the land use case has been approved. She refers, I assume it's she, it's the same stenographer, I don't know, but it says land use case instead of archaeological project or whatever we use as far as. So clearly they picked up, they're doing minutes for the zoning committee too.
Yeah, and we're all cousin peas in a pod that doesn't look quite the same from one end to the other. The question of minutes. The reason I took the position I took earlier is that this committee has never approved minutes that we didn't see as part of the packet. I, for one, can't remember that far back, and I'd have to go back and look at various cases in order to even have an inkling of what the minutes are referring to. Time does not allow that on a short-term delivery of digital material that, as far as I know, hasn't been posted via normal means. Second, I got and I don't know why, at one email address, but not the other, I got a set of minutes seeking signature. And I'm at a loss for what to do with that, because minutes seeking signature have to have been reviewed and approved by the committee. And
Chair
I
X,
put my hand with it.
that was my mistake. That was actually from me and sent to you mistakenly, so you can disregard that.
All right, thank you.
Chair Eck,
Yes, ma'am.
it was not our intention to have a vote on any of those minutes today. I think we post the agenda pretty early, and the hope was that we'd have a set of minutes a week in advance, and it did not get amended, and it should have been amended in the meeting. So please excuse that.
No, it's a problem that we're all trying to deal with. The city's trying to lurch into the 21st century using this digital thing that is not necessarily doing us all the service we would like. But also related to email, again, on one email and not the other, I got an inquiry as to whether or not I would be available for signing approved case materials. And I have no idea what materials were being referred to, and no idea if it was a hypothetical in future, would I be available? And so, since we're prevented from actually doing this the normal functional way of, we hear it, we approve it, there's a piece of paper and I sign it all that night and it's done. We're going to have to do things differently. We're going to have to schedule a time for me to come to City Hall to sign approved cases. It's just not going to work otherwise. The world I live in here is, again, it's a 19th century institution functioning by 20th century methods, trying to live in the 21st with digital doodahs that nobody knows how to make work. And so I'm up to my ears in digital things that don't work. So let's please do this the old fashioned way. Call me, If it's an emergency, I'm happy to talk. People know I can't shut up. But I can't respond to emails that are sent to different addresses when I'm not there. So if we want quick turnaround, y'all have my phone number, I do believe, and it is perfectly allowable to call me. And we can talk and figure something out.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question about minutes. So I just took a quick peek at the copies that were sent out earlier today. And they're all in the format where it just specifies the outcome of the case, really. I mean, who voted yes or no and any stipulations, but there's no inclusion of discussion that took place before the vote. Is that going to be the modus operandi moving forward? Or once we
No.
have the stenographer back, will we have those discussions again?
We will be having thorough minutes with our
So-
stenographer back.
A
Yes.
complete transcript then, good. Yeah, for instance, in the first case tonight, Mr. O'Connell's application, I couldn't remember what we asked of him last time, what additional material we were asking for, and I didn't have minutes to go back to and find out. So it is a bit of a handicap not to be able to review the actual discussion that took place the last meeting or 5 meetings ago, or whenever this case may have come up before. So I
And it is a
imagine the,
situation we hope to rectify.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
So at no point here did I want to come off as cranky. I just, I'm trying to be clear. I wonder about moving forward in this digital city environment. I will confess to all that right now, if it was going to look like the digital mess that we have been faced with for the last 8 to 10 months, I'm dead. I don't want to play. So if we can right the ship, tighten the jib, and sail smoothly, let us do so.
I second the motion.
Okay, I think we beat to death the administrative matters. Shall we move on to matters from the committee? Are there individuals who need to raise issues or convey details of future scheduling?
Well, I had something. I've been on this committee, I think, way too long. I think it's time for me to pack it in by the end of the year. So you guys should start finding a new historian. No cheers of joy, no tears of sadness.
I'm trying not to overflow.
Good.
But,
How are we ever going to end the meeting without
That's what I was thinking.
Jake?
pass a resolution, a motion, if you will, that designates the new member's name for purposes of the meeting is Jake.
You guys have some serious problems. You really need to resolve these things.
And without your help, we never will.
I don't know.
So thank you for that, Jake. I understand exactly. And thank you for years of putting up with it.
I got to thinking and I can't even figure out how many years it's been. So
I'm saying it's at least 13.
I started working here before 2010 when I retired from the Park Service. So it's at least 10 years. Yeah, 13 is more, maybe more than that. Anyway, however, I will stay with you until you're sure you've got a replacement.
Well,
Okay.
as the saying goes, you cannot be replaced, Jake, but we can find somebody to fill your spot.
Right. We find a warm body, you're off the hook.
Yeah, that's all we,
Be
that's
replaced.
all we really need is warm body.
That's been the problem up until now. Every time we need to replace somebody is finding somebody who was actually living. So, there.
Thank you for your service, Jake.
Yes.
Yeah.
definitely.
And on side notes, after we adjourn, I would make some other motions in other directions to local venues. So keep that in mind around the happy holiday. Any other matters from the committee?
Just one, I don't have the schedule in front of me. Can somebody tell me the date of the December meeting? Is it the 2nd or the 9th?
I don't have it in front of me either. My default calendar says it's the 2nd, but that's just a default.
That would make sense. It's the first Thursday. If the 2nd is fine. I would have a problem with the 9th. So I'll just say that if it is in fact the 9th, I won't be able to attend.
Taking me a moment to pull it up. Excuse me. The 2nd.
Very good. No issues then.
All right.
Huh.
Other than my usual ones, I don't have any new ones to offer either. So I'll be there. And hopefully member ones will be able to be with us next time.
When you say next time, you mean November?
November 4th, to be precise.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
be so zoomed out by the time that meeting happens on that date, you won't be able to recognize me. You can see right through me. All right. If that's it for matters from committee, I'm pointing out that Latin has no individual letter that differentiates between I and J, so it's item iota in the Greek.
Wise you are. Sorry, talking like Yoda, you see.
Make the motion, Jake.
You have the floor, Jake.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moving and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Zen,
Yes, indeed.
Member Ivy,
Yes.
Member Pierce.
Yes.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Pleasure to meet you, gentlemen. Thank you.
We will do that
Thank
in
you.
person one of these days.
Okay, all right.